Okay, so we're going to move into a pattern called re-imprinting. And let me pause a second. Is this too loud? Are you picking that up? I'm not sure if you are, but it certainly sounds a lot louder to me. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate re-imprinting. And first I want to start by talking a little bit about what the pattern is about. So re-imprinting has to do with forming a belief at a younger age that has impacted me over time. Sometimes I'm aware of only the impasse in the present, and I don't know what it is that created it in the first place. So we can also use the process to help find whatever that earliest impasse was, whatever those beliefs that were formed back in time, so that then we can re-imprint it, come up with new resources for that younger self, and bring it forward in time, changing the beliefs and stuff that were formed along the way, the generalizations, the beliefs, the conclusions that were made, the decisions that were made along the way based on that belief. Re-imprint all of that all the way forward in time to the present, and then taking those resources and imagining a future with these new resources, having sort of changed my perception of the past. Now, obviously, I'm not going to change the reality of the past, but as we all know, reality is perceptual anyway. It's based on how I think about what happened. So if I can change my perceptual reality, then I can have more resource moving into the future. So the possibility with re-imprinting is that multiple beliefs can be changed, whereas the previous patterns, we really were just working with one belief. So that's sort of an advantage with this pattern, is that you can deal with a number of generalizations, conclusions, decisions, and so on through working through this process. One other thing that sometimes happens with re-imprinting is forgiveness. Because sometimes what happens is that we either get judgmental of the people that are involved in helping create that belief in us in the first place, or we're judgmental of ourselves. And so sometimes re-imprinting allows us to come to forgiveness within ourselves and for those that were involved in the experience as well. So there's sort of a lot that is possible with re-imprinting. So it's quite a powerful technique and a useful one. So Anne and I talked earlier, and she's agreed to come up. She actually has a memory from 11 years old, and have you come up and tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll continue with re-imprinting. We're going to pause a second. Oh, they're going to mic you this time. Do you have this on pause right now? Okay. So you already have a memory.
Yes, I do.
Of where some of the difficulties that you've been having over your lifetime, and that you're currently still experiencing. Is that right?
Yes.
You have a sense that they come from somewhere, that it all began somewhere.
Yeah. I have a sense that it comes from this particular time of when I was 11. In the British education system, we used to have something called the 11+ exam, which I don't know if you know what it's like, but it's kind of a psychological type of test.
Okay.
Involving various mathematical and cognitive skills, an intelligence type of test. And I failed it. I've got very distinct memories of taking it. It was very, very hot, and I was wearing this thick jumper, and then I failed it. Those associations are there. And then I took it again. I had a chance of taking it again, and I failed it again. And it was like, wow, my goodness, I'm stupid, you know. And what happened was, with the system at the time, it was a system in transition. Most of my friends went to one school, which was the grammar school, the academic avenue to university. And there was the other school, which was essentially more like a vocational school. So this was the the lesser of the two.
Right.
And so it had a very powerful impact on me at that time.
Okay. What's your sense of how that has impacted you over time? What beliefs or generalizations or conclusions did you make as a result of that experience?
I think there are at least two things. One is that it's meant I've constantly been seeking a way of remedying that, which has led me to work extra hard, study extra hard, get lots of qualifications, keep going back to, I've got a PhD now, I've got a whole string of qualifications. And it's constantly kind of seeking validation of the fact that I'm not stupid.
Okay.
Out in the world around me. I'm trying to remember what the second thing was.
You said something about forming a belief about failure.
That's right.
You said that earlier.
That's right. I think having that, it's like an unease, a dis-ease. The consequence of that seeking has been that I have found it hard to be myself, because there's something about myself that I'm dissatisfied with, which is this sense of failure and being stupid.
Okay.
So what that means in my behavior is that if something doesn't work, there's a tendency for me to think, oh, I failed. That's the first place I look.
If something doesn't work, then you failed. Okay. I'm wondering, just think about it in terms of what happened back there. Did you make any conclusions about what it meant not to get to go to the particular school? And I mean, has that really worked for you in your life now, in the sense that you've wanted to strive to make sure that you kept possibilities open to you? And is there any positive benefits to that?
Oh yes, huge benefits.
Yeah, because you just mentioned that you have a PhD and other things. So was that belief driving some of that, or?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
So it's perhaps pushed me to do things that I might not have done otherwise.
Okay.
I guess the challenge is seeing those for what they are.
Right. As long as that imprint is there, it's difficult to see it in a positive way.
Yes. It's like hard to really celebrate, because as soon as I have achieved something, it's like, okay, all right. Is it like almost an emptiness, because, well, what's next?
Right. Do any of you have a sense of that experience in your own life? It's kind of like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm always trying to seek validation, if I'm always trying to move forward, then when I complete something, I may feel validation for a little while, but then I have to do it again, and then I have to do it again and again. And so I never really get to celebrate. I never really get to feel the accomplishment of a particular objective or goal.
Yeah.
And feel what it feels like to just be a person who's able to accomplish things.
Right.
Because I don't feel that way, I constantly have to accomplish something else.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can really see the impacts of something, of one single event like that, that can have a significant impact over time. So you have some awareness. I want to sort of ask you a little bit more about your experience, your associated experience today with this, how it feels in your body and what you're aware of visually, and if there's anything that you hear when you're in a situation today where that belief or those conclusions are present.
Okay. It's a heaviness here. It's a drooping of my shoulders. I feel my physiology drop. I feel I'm aware of looking down, and I'm aware of hearing a voice over here which says there's no point in trying. I'm not really seeing pictures.
There's no point in trying because no matter what I do, I still feel this way. That kind of thing? Or
Well, I won't succeed, will I?
I won't succeed. Okay.
There's a turning in, a closedness, a sense of sadness. Because I have all these other skills, don't I? How could I feel like this? There's another voice over here.
So that's the one that's kind of wondering how you could
Yeah.
be feeling this if that,
Yeah.
with all these other resources and so on.
Exactly.
And yet it's still there.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit older than 11.
Yes. Yes. Come through time with this.
So it's many sounds and feeling and a sense of grayness here,
Okay.
which is connected internally. And I'm it's almost something around me preventing me from connecting with, well, it doesn't, other people don't enter into it really.
So part of why I'm asking you about this is to really have you become fully aware of what it's like, so that when it's different, you'll be able to compare it and know that it's different for yourself.
Right. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah? Okay. So Anne, I assume by coming up here that you're open to exploring changing this.
A little bit fed up with it.
Okay. Okay. So you've come to some conclusions about it.
Yes.
You feel ready to
Yeah.
explore making some changes around
Very
it.
gently, perhaps put in. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So what we're going to do next is I'm going to have you travel back in time to when you were 11. And I want to make a clear distinction that we're going to watch it from the outside, rather than that you're going to re-experience it as an 11-year-old. You're going to watch her.
Okay.
So it's almost like you and I are going back there and watching a film
Okay.
of that experience. And the purpose of that is to identify any other beliefs that were formed, to just become familiar again with what it is that happened, and really make sure that we sort of look at all that was there.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can really learn from it if we need to, and also get the information that we need to change it.
Okay.
Okay? So when you're ready, I want you to imagine that your timeline flows out in front of you to the future.
Yeah, it's over here.
Great. And show me where your past goes.
Over here.
Out over there. Okay.
It's a new past. It used to be over there, but I've moved it
Oh,
here.
you've moved it. Great. So your representation of time, and you're here in the present. And when you're ready, you can begin to sort of float out of the present and travel back in time to when you were 11. But go back as an adult so you can watch it.
Okay.
Oh, you're there. Great. So when you're ready, start that film and just watch through what happened.
Actually, I noticed something that happened just before this was I'd changed schools. We'd moved house and changed schools. And Anne, I'll talk about her as Anne. It's easier.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Anne was pretty unsettled by this move because she'd been living with her grandmother on the farm, and they moved to. She and her parents moved to a new housing estate. It was a new school, and just a few months later, she took this exam. So it was like, now that I see it, it's like she had some new friends, a new security, I suppose, in the friendship. And then with this exam, that was sort of gone. So she'd been unsettled by the move from the farm, which had been her life for 10 years. And then in this short time, the new stability she had was gone again. So I think that that's definitely part of why she thought it was the end of the world. So it was associated strongly with new friendships. And also, okay, what am I noticing as well? I'm noticing that she coded going to this school as a failure, whereas going to that school, they were clever.
Uh-huh.
She was not.
So that was a decision that she made
Yes,
about which school was better than the other.
that's right. The funny thing about that is she ended up going to the middle school. Oh, sorry, she ended up going to the other school because she was the cream in this school. She went to the other school for English, French, and maths and retained this belief that everyone around her was better than her.
Uh-huh.
And it was only after some time there she began to get a sense of, well, maybe they aren't. That was really, that belief was very firmly there. So even when it came to, for example, A levels, she only chose to do 2 instead of 3 because she didn't believe she was clever enough. Associating it.
Yes. That's nice to notice, isn't it?
Mm.
When you begin to fall there and you start to feel what it felt like.
Yeah.
And then to step out again and to recognize
Yeah.
that from this place, we're just examining sort of what happened for her.
Yeah, and she's over there.
Yeah. And we can have some compassion for her and realize that she went through a difficult time. She had a lot of decisions to make, and a lot of beliefs were formed out of being in a vulnerable place.
Yeah. I think one of the beliefs was, one of the subjects she really enjoyed at school, in her main school, was geography. And going out into the Scottish Highlands and learning in that context became coded as the way to learn. Because I loved it, she loved it. And so there was this generalization formed about learning in the outdoors and that environment, and climbing and walking and hiking and exploring rocks and animals, and all of that was marvelous. But and again, that was because it was with a person who was very encouraging. This mad geography teacher. And at the same time, I guess for her, everything in the other school seemed like a bit of a struggle. And the way I look at it now, it's because of the way she was seeing it. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, it was just she thought of it, perceived it as a struggle.
So what do you think that the secondary gain or positive intent was of perceiving it the way that she did?
Well, the useful thing is she kept her humble feet firmly on the ground and never ever assumed that she was more important than other people.
So that's nice, that's positive.
Right. Because some of those people were pretty big-headed. They thought they were really the bee's knees.
And that was unattractive to her.
Yes.
To be that way.
Yes.
So by thinking of herself as less, or not as smart, or not as clever, then she kept that part of herself in check.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you probably know in the UK there's also a social class associated with different schools and different kinds of education, and that goes along with all of that, all part of that territory. So Anne developed a tendency for working with the disadvantaged, the less able or the less considered able in much of her work through her life.
So do you think that's also a positive result of forming those beliefs at that time?
Yes. Yes. The difficulty, though, is having that as a limitation.
Yes. We're aware
It's
of
almost
that.
like a ceiling on what she allowed herself to perceive herself to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. It's a lot of dissatisfaction personally, isn't there?
Yes.
It may have an impact on how she's perceived
Mm-hmm.
by other people, but her own perception of herself is limited.
Yeah. It's almost like choosing a safe place to be,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a safe place to work where I know I'll get results. Where she'll get results.
So we're asking about the positive intent to just make sure that we retain those positive things that happened
Mm-hmm.
while we address the part that was limiting.
Okay.
So the next step is to kind of begin to examine, were there other people involved in this past experience that were significant members in helping her or being a part of creating those beliefs?
The limiting one.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, for example, the culture may have been,
Yes. Yeah, and
may
I
have
remember.
had an impact.
Yes, and I remember one or two teachers in the grammar school who were really snobbish and very, as I recall, cruel in their coding of what success and what was
So
clever and
in
what wasn't.
informing the children as to what was clever and what was smart and what
That's
wasn't,
right.
and so on.
That's right.
So you can remember two in particular.
Yes.
Anybody else that you can remember
Well,
that was
my
significant?
parents, have had this attitude, which an attitude of as long as you're happy, it's okay,
Uh-huh.
which is positive in a wonderful way, and yet
Mhm.
it's not exactly driving. And they didn't, I guess, there is a little blame there, perhaps. It sounds strange in a way, for them not supporting me more. It was almost like school went on by itself, and my dad left school at 14, so he didn't know much about school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I guess I have wished at certain points in my life that they had pushed me a little more to be more of who I could be,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Sure.
So there's them.
Are you aware of the positive intention of your parents and how they did it?
Yeah, I mean, it was filled with unconditional love,
Okay.
and they were doing the best they could.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So even though it wasn't exactly how you would have liked it, it did have its positive,
Absolutely.
impact.
And it gave me a freedom to be. The irony is, it gave me a freedom to be whatever I needed to be in my development.
Right.
And the environment is pretty strong at that age, I think. Yeah.
And yet in some ways the way they acted towards you or communicated with you also helped you to form those limitations.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Perhaps because Anne saw herself as a victim rather than an actor.
Mm-hmm. So we've got your parents as significant others. We've also got these two teachers.
Mm-hmm.
What do you sense that the two teachers' positive intentions were?
Oh, I mean, yeah, would be to get us to strive to achieve as much as possible, and that's what they would be going for.
Right. Even though their methods may not have been effective with all of you,
Right.
that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
You sense.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about that cruelty part? Do you think that has a positive intention?
Yeah, I guess it's frustration on their part,
Uh-huh.
wanting and not necessarily getting what they're wanting.
Uh-huh. Not being able to achieve the results that they wanted.
And doing the best they can with the skills they have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe it worked for them.
Okay. Let's take a moment now to identify the resources that, let's start with the teachers, that they would have needed in order to have done an even better job than they did. What would they have needed to have that they didn't display or didn't have access to?
Knowledge of learning styles.
Okay.
Ability to build rapport and support and encourage and love their students, as well as all the gifts they had to bring.
As well as, yeah. So as you're beginning to describe these resources, I want you to imagine them having them.
Okay.
That as you describe them, that you are sort of giving them to them.
Right. Okay.
Realizing something? Yeah.
They probably had those things in other parts of their lives.
Here's a Kleenex if you like.
Thanks. Sorry, I need to do this with my eyes shut.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Say that again. They probably...
No, I suddenly realized they probably, the things I talked about, the rapport and the love and the things that weren't necessarily, or I didn't perceive them showing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly became aware of them being people. And having these abilities in other parts of their lives with their wives, their kids, or wherever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the insight is that it's useful to see them as human beings.
And a lot of times we don't all have access to all our resources, do we?
Nope.
In any given moment. We wish everyone would just act out of their resources all the time. Then none of us would have any bad beliefs, right?
And you wouldn't have a job.
We wouldn't have any limitations. Exactly. I'd be out of a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What resources could you have added to your parents that would have helped them to have done something differently or more resourceful?
Yeah. Oops. I guess if they'd taken more interest, if they'd had the resources to have more interest in what was happening in my school life, but they didn't have the map of the world from which to do that. If they, it was almost, as long as you're happy, which is wonderful. I mean, many, many kids want that because their parents are exactly the opposite, driving and pushing and all of that stuff. It was like the resources that, I guess I wish they'd expressed more interest and been more curious about what was happening for me in my school life. That might have been enough. And participated a little more, but I guess they didn't know how to. I don't recall them, sort of coming to school meetings and mixing with the teachers. I don't recall any of that. I'm wondering what they were doing.
Yeah. So had they had some resource, they would have been able to do that more easily?
Yeah, right. Be more engaged as a partner with me in my journey through school when it was difficult, when it, especially when it was difficult. Yeah.
And so imagine giving them those resources that would have enabled them to have been more present with you in that way.
Yeah.
Maybe they did have them, they just didn't have access to them all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other significant others that you feel are needing represented here, that were significant in helping you form or come to those conclusions that you came to about yourself?
I guess some of my classmates and some of the classmates in the other school. It's like
Particular classmates, or would it be more like classmates as a significant other? Because that's possible. We can put them
no,
together
it's
into a
pretty
group.
generalized.
Okay, so let's put them into a group.
Yeah.
What resources would they have needed in order to have been?
Oh, the one that pops in straight away is almost to step out of their social class.
Ah,
So the ones in this school would need to step out the social class to understand me. Because I suppose I'm middle, petit bourgeois.
uh-huh.
And a lot of the kids there were from a working class background, and a lot of the kids here were from an upper middle class and more affluent background.
Uh-huh.
So it was like the kids would have needed to have been able to understand other perspectives to understand me, and the kids here would have had to have other perspectives to understand me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this moving back and forwards led me to conclude that I wasn't understood.
Mm-hmm.
I was
So
this
there's another
oddball.
one.
I was
There's
this.
another one. Not understood, failure, not smart, not clever,
It's a good package, isn't it?
and at the same time, not wanting to be perceived as snobbish,
Yep.
right? Associating more easily or comfortably with the people at the lower end of the class group, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling more comfortable there or something?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So imagine giving all those students the resources that they needed.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that fits very well. Ooh, then we change the world.
Yeah, we change the world, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, it just everything just goes like that when I do that. I just
Sort of creates this human element.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
So now what we're going to do is making note that we have helped the others to get connected with resources that they didn't have at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The classmates, your parents, as well as those two teachers.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to replay the film now, still in this dissociated place, noticing the changes that occur when these necessary resources are available to these people.
Right.
Noticing what it would have been like
From the beginning?
from the test taking, right? Isn't that the
Yeah.
sort of the imprint that we're dealing
Right.
with?
Just checking.
Noticing how, with all these people having all these resources available, how Anne might have experienced that test taking differently. What changes are you aware of?
I'm just aware of the insignificance of the test itself. It's like, isn't it amazing that I had this opportunity? Because I had my parents sort of reframing things, and I'm sure they did in their own way. It just, I'm coded it that they didn't. Now they did. And that, I mean, these schools were on the same place. So I had those friends nearby. Those ones that went to the other school are just in
Right.
another place.
Right.
I coded them into another social class, and now they're just nearby. And then the fact that I had the opportunity to really excel in this other school, I became the head girl and all of this stuff. It's like excel. I had that experience of that with this incredibly, I remember in particular the geography teacher and all of that support. It's just like, wow, I had all that opportunity to learn about and to work with a lot of kids who felt less than. And those people in the other school didn't have that. Wow. What, yeah, what Anne didn't have was the ability to appreciate it. And just see those teachers in this school, in the grammar school, you know, they were kind of, now when I rerun the video and Anne sees them as human beings, she's able to respond in the way that they wanted by challenging herself and going for it. That's
Sounds
interesting.
resourceful, doesn't it?
Yeah. What is there to lose?
Ah. So what new beliefs or conclusions come out of seeing this in a new light?
Wow. Okay. And my parents are wonderful people.
That's
Really,
new?
really.
Oh,
Well,
really,
it's like
really now.
really, really. There isn't that little bit of
Judgment or...
judgment there anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a parent myself. I know about that. Ooh, that's another yes. I mean, this is just one intelligence that was tested. I believe there are many. That the resource now, if Anne had that resource at that time, she'd just come to that conclusion. Okay, this works for some people and it doesn't work for others. Some people have got this kind of intelligence, which is the old IQ kind of test, and Howard Gardner's produced at least 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 more. And the evidence is that Anne excels in many of those intelligences. So the belief, the belief that Anne's okay. She's fine. She's very capable as a learner. A generalization Anne could have come to in the grammar school is that she could have modeled the people around her. Woo. That would have been interesting. That would have been, she wasn't looking at those.
Right.
And the new movie, she looks at the people. She looks at that efficient person next to her who has got that ability to learn really fast and modeled that. Learn that, maths, different, especially maths. Woo.
Wow, this 13-year-old has a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Or 11-year-old, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Right, 11-year-old.
I think, that would also mean that learning is easy and enjoyable and fun. It's not about identity, it's about just a skill. It's about living out our particular intelligences. And there are skills to be learned, and that's fun. Woo. Woo. Woo.
I'm sure that if you stayed here, you'd get more and more.
Yeah. Wow. Do you want me to come out?
So I want to take some time now to begin to associate. First with your classmates. imagining taking their perception, coming from their reality,
The
with-
new one.
with these resources, yes, and associating into one or more of them, experiencing Anne from their perspective, with these resources fully available to them.
Yeah.
Really beginning to experience that memory now as more than a memory, associating into it. Making some new discoveries there through that association.
They were trying to help me.
Yeah. And when you're ready, stepping into each of those teachers one at a time. Feeling what their experience was like, these resources. What they were doing.
Nurturing and supporting.
And then stepping into, associating into your parents one at a time. With these new resources. Making any new discoveries that you can make through associating into their experience.
Just feeling supported. Yeah.
And finally stepping into your younger self. 11-year-old Anne. And feeling what it feels like to be her. With all those around her with new resources. Going through that experience again. Taking those tests. Formulating beliefs. Discovering what new beliefs and conclusions come this time. Quite different than before. Yeah.
There was an attempt for the other one to pop in.
Oh yeah?
I'm not sure. Yeah, but it's not. It's sort of stepped aside.
You mean some of the old beliefs?
There was a little. I'm not sure. There's a sadness that came up, and I'm not sure what that was. It could have been a sadness about hanging on to it for so long.
Yeah. Sometimes in letting go of something, even though it was something that was limiting, can still
Yeah.
feel a bit of loss.
Right, but that actually now helps me to feel this right across here.
Yeah.
It's warm, very warm.
Nice. I want you to bring that resource that you're feeling right now forward through time. From 11 years old, all the way back to the present. Allowing this new resource, this new experience, to revise any other beliefs that pop into your mind from your unconscious. As your unconscious brings up different moments in your lifetime that could be transformed or changed as a result of this new resource living within you.
It's like, whoa, I've got this, I've got this incredible choice as to how as to how I deal with these things. I'm in charge. Woo. It's like I can be really strategic about it, and take and give and take and give and enjoy. Woo. Wow. Wow.
Take the time that you need and just let me know when you're in the present again.
It's almost like lots of what can I say, files. Each one is just like changing color, changing, I don't know, just straight up here. Yeah.
Kind of updating. Huh?
Updating, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Imagine now taking this resource into your future.
Forgot about that.
Turn and look to your future. Imagining how this new resource is going to change, transform your future. And what you believe, the conclusions that you make about things, the way you present yourself and hold yourself, the way you deliver yourself to the world, the way you bring yourself to different experiences, different relationships. Seeing the result of this change, sprinkling it out there, all over your future. Yeah. You have that to look forward to, don't you? Yeah.
It's like, how could I not do that before?
Because now's the time.
I've got a little adjusting to do.
Yeah, you can see that.
It's like there's a balloon rising up. Ooh, and I'm not used to that.
Yeah. It's rich, isn't it?
Yes, it's so rich, so colorful, so bright.
I can pull you back to the present for a moment.
Okay, whoops.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
You have more time to explore your future.
Really? Ooh.
I want you to make note now of the differences between your kinesthetic visual and auditory experience now versus what we did at the very beginning when we first started?
There's no comparison. There's no comparison.
And even as we try and recall some of those beliefs that you had before
It's really,
about failure and about not being clever and not smart enough.
pardon?
And,
I don't know how to access them. Feelings all up here, it's lightness, it's forward moving, it's up there, and it's like the past is okay. And here am I in the center. And I can be there, or here, or there, and I'm still up here. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
One
Thank
final
you.
step when you're ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Your perception has changed of the past at this point. And we did a lot of changing by adding a lot of resources that weren't there originally. So I want you now to remember how it really was. And yet still notice what's different.
Dissociated or associated?
Dissociated.
Okay. Okay, all right. I've got
Looking
you.
back on that memory going, but how it really happened was how it happened.
Yeah.
Those classmates didn't have those resources available, and those teachers didn't necessarily act with love and kindness and
Right.
awareness. And your parents didn't engage and show up as much as you would have liked them to.
Right.
And yet that doesn't mean that it has to be any different than it is.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's just the way it was.
that's the way it was. Doesn't have to mean all those things, does it?
No, not at all.
Not at all. And you still feel the resource within you.
Yes.
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 Nice. Well, thank you for being willing to come up and help us with this amazing demonstration.
Thank you
Yes,
very much for this
beautifully done.
amazing experience.
Beautifully
Yeah.
done.
Oh, lovely.
I'm going to have you stay just for a minute if you're willing to answer any questions from the group,
Sure.
if you're
Yeah.
open to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's do that quickly and then we'll take a break. So if there's anything that you want to know from Anne's experience, let's start there and then we'll take a short break.
What was, I couldn't follow because your voice is not high for me to hear.
I wasn't
What
loud enough?
was, yeah,
Apologize.
The turning point that shifted, what was the question that took Anne to the turning point?
Okay, for me, I think it was when I added the resources in to the past experience.
For each,
Yes.
person?
And that just shifted because it was a combination of stepping into them. I can't remember which bit exactly, but it was about stepping into them and sensing them being loving, caring human beings.
Positive intent.
Yes, that's right.
So the
That just
positive
filled
intent
me.
is the resource that you could see when you stepped in them.
I could feel.
Feel
I
and
felt
see.
more than I
Okay.
saw, yes.
Your parents and your friends, your teacher.
That's right.
Okay, and that's what.
And you probably did a little of association right then too, when you were
Yes, I
giving them
did.
resources.
I
Yes,
did.
she said
You didn't just do it dissociated, you actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's here.
Yeah.
So it is finding the positive intent and associating with each character in the event,
With new resources.
such as new resources, which is the positive
She,
intent.
the
that you
there was the
see.
positive intent of how they were originally behaving, which is different than what resources would they have needed in order to have behaved even more
Yeah, that question
supportive,
led me to that.
even
I
more
heard
supportive?
that, from her talking about her parents, that a resource of taking part of
Yeah,
my
being more
schooling,
engaged in her
engaged.
experience.
Mhm.
So she added that to them, and she added to the classmates a greater awareness of the class system and seeing each other more for who they were, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was that question about what resources would they have needed to behave in the way that she wanted them to. That was a key piece, because that allowed me to access more resources than I would have done without the question.
Right.
And this is what shifted.
Yeah.
How would you describe the new resourceful belief?
It's like my head is the balloon. I'm sort of, ooh. Yeah, it's, I mean, you all look different. Everything looks different. Yeah, it's like I am floating. And the other thing was like pulling me down. It's like, I don't know yet. It's just like it's really light. I haven't yet explored it fully. It's a very, very light, open sense. Kinesthetic sense, it's here, not down here. It's about this level, and it's, whoa, right up, the lightness up in my head. Like I can really use the stuff that's in there now.
Oftentimes in this process versus the other two that we did, where we're really trying to define and clarify that other belief, this process allows new beliefs and new conclusions to be made, which are not necessarily spoken or have words to them. Does that make sense? I mean, she may have words for it later. What beliefs have now emerged?
Something that you're probably so unfamiliar with that it's hard to describe.
What I'm sensing is, you know, when I was experiencing this, I'm feeling that throughout my body, actually. It's like there's all this updating going on, and all the molecules are going, and it's actually, that's sort of describing it's transmutating, and I don't know what's happening, really, really. It just feels really good. Yeah, wow.
Let's let you have that for a little while.
Thank you.
So let's
When you,
pause there.
when
One more
new
question.
belief comes out, do you address it or just let it?
Let's talk about that after the break, okay? Hold that question. So let's take, is 10 minutes enough before we get back? Try and cool down the room and stuff?